Hello and welcome to today's information webinar on teaching ESL and EFL around the world and here in the US, and about the TESOL Certificate program that we offer here at the Rennert, New York TESOL Center. My name is James Steckenberg and I am the Head of Teacher Training here at the TESOL Center in New York. Before we begin, a little terminology. If you've been doing some research, then you will have seen lots of different acronyms. There's teaching English as a second language, teaching English as a foreign language, and these are very similar, but usually we refer to second language if you're teaching in an English-speaking country, and foreign language if you're teaching in a non-English-speaking country. But for all intents and purposes, they're the same thing. There's also English language teaching, and then this umbrella term that is very common in the US and increasingly common around the world, and this is teaching English to speakers of other languages, TESOL, and that's what we'll be using today. Why become an ESL or an EFL teacher? There are a lot of good reasons. One is that teaching people English, giving them English, gives them increased opportunities and really helps improve people's lives. It's also a wonderful opportunity to experience with and interact with different cultures, either by living abroad or by having students of lots of different cultures in your class in a multicultural class in the US. It's also a great opportunity, particularly if you're recently out of college, to build your resume by gaining real-world experience and intercultural competence, which are increasingly important in today's workplace. If you're staying here in the US, though, for example, staying in New York, it's a great opportunity to support an artistic career. Many people do, writers, musicians, etc. It's also, teaching in general is a great way to share your knowledge, and that can be incredibly rewarding. If you're choosing to travel abroad, it's a great way to earn a living while traveling and experiencing different cultures, different countries. You'll make new friends, and it's the beginning of building a rewarding career. Where can you work? Talk about a career. In the US, there are a lot of different options. Private language schools are one of the main places. A lot of language schools have or are accredited, so in those places typically you'll need a BA. However, there are also a lot of immigrant organizations that offer ESL classes, and these places don't typically need to be accredited, so may not require a BA if you don't have one. Also, it is possible to get work as an ESL teacher in private or charter K-12 schools, typically not in the public school system. The qualifications or requirements do vary from state to state, but they do usually require an MA in the public school system, but in the private and charter system it's a little bit different. Also, of course, you can get private tutoring, which can be a great way to earn more money, because typically you'll earn more per hour private tutoring than you do teaching group classes. Abroad, you can pretty much teach anywhere, all over the world. Private language schools, again, are incredibly common, but also teaching in the K-12 system, often as a teacher's assistant or focusing on spoken English, for example, teaching conversational English. It is possible with a BA and a TESOL certificate to get work in some universities abroad, and it's very common to teach in-company business English, obviously, in this situation. Also private tutoring, again. Looking in a little bit more detail at working here in the US, there are basically two different student populations. There are international students, and schools that cater to international students, typically the work is Monday to Friday in a daytime schedule, because students are here full-time. Enrollments do peak in the summer, which coincides with the academic year in a lot of countries, and also the European summer vacation. Salaries do range significantly, so you should always check what they are. And I always recommend that if you're interested in teaching international students, you should send your resume. Often positions are not advertised because the person making the hiring decisions will use the resumes that they have on file before needing to post a vacant position. So I always recommend that you send your resume to every school that you know of. The other population here in the US are local immigrants. Here the work is generally steadier throughout the year. There are a lot of classes in the evenings and on the weekends. However, it is also possible for daytime classes. We have a spreadsheet with names and contacts of all of the schools and organizations here in New York and nearby New Jersey for both of these student populations to help you with your job search. Of course, private students are also a great way to make more money, and a lot of people will teach group classes and then also teach private students. If you're looking for work overseas, just breaking it down by different regions, in Asia, Japan is still a very popular place to get work. There's a great government-sponsored program to place teaching assistants in public schools in Japan, the JET program. We also do have schools with contacts with some private schools in Japan. Korea is a really popular place still to get work. Typically pretty good salaries, often airfares are paid. Often a one-year contract, can be longer, possibly shorter. It is therefore possible to arrange work in advance, although we work with several agencies to help you with this. China is a huge hotspot right now. It's pretty easy to find work, and there are a wide range of possibilities geographically, in terms of salary, in terms of different positions, and we work with several agencies in China to help you with your job placement before you go. Thailand and Vietnam are very popular places, fun to live. It is easier typically to find work when you're there in the country, although we do work with agencies for Thailand if you wanted to try to arrange it before you go. Another popular place in Asia is Taiwan. The work here is mainly in private language schools. Hiring does happen throughout the year, although peaking in September, and again we work with an agency in Taiwan. Other popular places in Asia are Hong Kong, Malaysia, and Singapore. Again, in these countries it is typically easier to find work when you're there. However, we do work with an agency for Singapore to help with your placement before you go. Western Europe is very popular. It can be difficult to get work legally in Western Europe due to the visa requirements for EU countries. A lot of people do typically work under the table. Of course, I'm not officially recommending that. I'm just saying a lot of people do it. But if you want to get more legitimate work, one option is Spain, and they have a great program called the NET program that places teaching assistants in public school systems, and at the same time you complete an online graduate diploma. You need to have a TESOL certificate and a BA, so it's a great chance to get an additional qualification while teaching part-time, and you also have the option of getting additional work in a private language school or teaching private students. So it's a great way to spend a year in Spain, and we do have contacts with the NET program if you're interested. Another very popular country, of course, is France. There is a government-sponsored program for fluent French speakers for teaching positions. However, if you're not a fluent French speaker, one option in France, and actually in a lot of countries, is to take a language course, and on your student visa it can allow you to work part-time while studying. Another country is Germany. Business English is very common here, and I do know several people who have been sponsored for visas in Germany, so it's definitely possible. Eastern and Central Europe are also very popular options. There are a lot of different countries that have teaching available. Language schools, again, are the most common. Typically, it helps to be in country, but we do have contacts with schools in Russia and Ukraine. Salaries and benefits are often pretty good in Central and Eastern Europe, and of course there's so many countries in the region and in nearby that it can be a really fun place to live. Turkey is also very popular, typically pretty easy to get work, although again in country is easier. We do work with several agencies if you're looking for work before you go though. Latin America, if you're thinking about heading down south, practicing your Spanish or your Portuguese, also very popular. There's lots of different countries to choose from. Pay is often good compared to the cost of living, and it's usually, again, pretty easy to find work, but typically in country. Contract lengths do vary and places to work do vary, but it's a fun, pretty easy place to get work. Middle East and Africa. In the Middle East, the salaries are high, typically. Some countries like the U.A.E., where a lot of the work is in universities, will require an MA. But other countries where the work is in, for example, in Saudi Arabia, there's a lot of oil companies. They'll even fly you out to oil rigs and like a few weeks on and a week off, that kind of thing. Often an MA is not required, although a TESOL certificate typically is. Middle Eastern places do typically hire from abroad via a Skype interview. They do pay for airfare. so it's easier to get work before you go. We do have contacts with agencies for Saudi Arabia and also with a school in Yemen that's affiliated or associated with the U.S. Embassy. In Africa, there's Saharan Africa, countries like Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia. There's a really great US-based organization, Ahmadiyya, that has a lot of language programs throughout Northern Africa and the Middle East, and they will hire teachers from the US and then support placement and integration into those countries. If you're looking for work in sub-Saharan Africa, positions are typically volunteer, although some countries like Rwanda do have paid positions, and we have details for Ahmadiyya and the volunteer programs in sub-Saharan Africa. You've thought about where you want to go, but there are a lot of other factors that you'll need to take into account when choosing a job. Other things that you want to consider are the type of learners that you want to teach, the salaries and benefits, what's included, what isn't included. Other factors to take into account are the cost of living, the hours, for example, is preparation time paid or unpaid, the length of contract, the visa requirements, etc. In addition to all those practical things, there's also other things like the climate and the culture and your comfort level with different climates, different cultures, etc. Different people have different comfort levels, degrees of willingness to, or comfort in being in cultures very different from their own. Why get a TESOL certificate? There are a lot of good reasons. One, of course, is that you get a better job. In terms of location, for example, in China, for example, in Shanghai and Beijing, you almost certainly require a BA and a TESOL certificate. If you don't have that, then you might get work in different, less popular locations. You'll also typically get a better job in terms of salaries, benefits, working conditions. These days, reputable schools really do require a TESOL or TEFL certificate. In addition to that, of course, you'll be a better teacher. Imagine it's your first day and there's 15 or 20 people sitting there staring at you. If you don't have any teaching qualification, you're probably going to be feeling pretty nervous at that point and maybe kind of stressed. However, if you have a TESOL certificate, you're going to have the skills and knowledge and you'll know what to do. You'll already have your lessons planned, more than likely. So, of course, the other people in this equation are the students, and you become a teacher, yes, to travel and to experience different cultures, but also because you want to help your students and give them meaningful learning opportunities, and you'll be able to do that much more easily and more effectively if you know what you're doing. You'll also, of course, gain valuable professional experience during the program, start to create a professional network, etc. So what is the SIT TESOL Certificate? That's the program that we offer here at the Rennert TESOL Center. There are basically 4 different elements. There's the workshop sessions, and these are very hands-on, very practical. There's the guided lesson planning, because you will have practice teaching with real ESL students, and then the post-teaching feedback sessions. The practice teaching, you will teach for 6 hours to real ESL students, and this is really important. If, for example, you're just teaching your classmates don't act and interact and react in the same way that real students do. Real students have questions and problems and difficulties, and if you don't have experience with this, then you're not going to be fully prepared. Our practice teaching sessions, while you're teaching, your classmates are observing, and while they're teaching, you're observing. So we follow the practice teaching sessions each day with feedback. And these are really valuable learning opportunities because you're really analyzing you and your classmates' lessons in terms of what was helpful for your students' learning, what possibly hindered your students' learning, or what questions you have. And by really using that really analyzing that, it can really be used as a useful learning experience. You'll start from day 3, so we get right into it, and it's a constant throughout the course. The course is also very strongly based on experiential learning, so you have a variety of experiences in the workshops and then are guided by the trainer using those experiences to discover the key principles about language teaching. There's also a strong focus on reflective practice. I've mentioned already that there's feedback sessions after each of the practice teaching. You'll evaluate your own lessons, you'll evaluate your peers' lessons, you'll get feedback from them and also from your trainer. And you'll also write 2 extended, very detailed reflections on lessons that you teach. The idea here is that if you have the ability to self-reflect, notice what was happening in your lessons, and form meaningful, useful action plans, then you have the skills to continue to grow and develop professionally after the course is finished. If you don't have that, then there's the danger that you'll kind of stagnate at the end point of the course. And our hope is that you'll be able to really continue to grow and develop professionally after the course. Here is a sample schedule for the intensive program. We also offer a part-time extensive course that has the same content but obviously a different format. But looking here at the intensive schedule, you'll see that practice teaching starts on the 3rd day, followed by feedback. There's a lot of homework, there's a lot of input sessions, workshops, etc. So it's a very full-on, full-time program, but it's amazing what you'll be able to learn, process, and implement in such a short period of time. By the end of the course, you'll be able to plan and teach lessons for vocabulary, listening, grammar, reading, also writing, pronunciation, using a variety of effective teaching practices, and also to reflect on your teaching, focusing on your students' learning. So I take the SIT TESOL Certificate course here at the Rennert, New York TESOL Center. First of all, the certificate is issued by World Learning's SIT Graduate Institute. This is a prestigious graduate university. They're very well known and respected in the industry all around the world. They were originally created as training for the Peace Corps. And since then, they've developed a lot of master's programs and, of course, the TESOL Certificate program that's very learner-oriented, culturally sensitive, humanistic, strong focus on experiential learning, and education that is often described as transformative, and you'll experience all of these things during the TESOL course. The certificate is offered at lots of different sites around the world, including here at New York, of course, throughout Latin America, throughout Europe, Asia, and Australia, and also in Africa. The TESOL certificate through SIT exceeds the international industry standards, and of course it never expires. The standards for the industry around the world are that a TESOL or TEFL program should have at least 100 hours of instruction, preferably 120 these days. Our course is actually 154 to 160, depending on the method, whether it's the intensive or extensive, and it's face-to-face instruction, and this is really key. There are a lot of online courses that will teach you about teaching, but teaching is a very practical skill, and without that face-to-face interaction, it's much more difficult to learn such a practical skill. The course should also have at least 6 hours of a practicum, and a practicum can be a somewhat loosely defined term, and it's useful finding out what the practicum is. For example, some courses might have a 20-hour practicum, but then when you actually look into it, that practicum can just be lesson observation. And classroom observation is nowhere near as useful as actually being there in front of the students and teaching them. So we have 6 hours of assessed practice teaching with real ESL students. And the assessed is also important. I mentioned the feedback sessions that follow the practice teaching. So rather than getting like a general report at the end of 6 hours or 10 hours or 20 hours, each and every class is observed by you and your classmates and analyzed and evaluated, and really useful feedback is given and received, and useful action points are formed from that. So it's an incredibly valuable part of the learning process. Courses should also be externally assessed. Every single course that we run, a representative comes from SIT and spends a day with us to make sure that the course is being run according to their high standards. And the certificate should be issued by an accredited organization. Of course, SIT is a graduate university. You will also gain access to Rennert's lifetime job assistance, and this takes lots of different forms. First, we work with a lot of different partner agencies for job placement assistance in many different countries. I've referred to a lot of them already. We also have contacts at schools in many countries. Our affiliated language school in New York actively recruits from the graduates of the course, and many teachers in the language school took the certificate program at the TESOL Center. We also provide all of our graduates with a comprehensive database of language schools and organizations that offer ESL classes here in New York, with contact details to help you with your job search if you're planning to stay in the area. Of course, SIT trainers will act as references for all of the people who take the course. We also provide graduates with insider tips on many different countries from people who have actually lived and taught there. We also give you a list of useful referral websites that have current reputable job postings. We also forward job vacancies to our alumni via our e-newsletter and group emailings and our Facebook page. And we also have a lifetime assistance for giving you help and guidance writing your resume and your cover letter. In addition, you get connected to various alumni networks, including the SIT Careers Connections and the SIT Alumni Listserv. This is really useful. Every person who takes the TESOL certificate course around the world gets added to the listserv. Then if you have a question, you can send an email and it goes to everybody on the listserv. So, for example, maybe you're thinking about moving to Thailand, you can send an email saying, does anyone have any tips, anyone know about any jobs available, that kind of thing, and then you can get responses. People also post jobs on the listserv, so that's also really helpful. Here at Rennert, we issue a bi-monthly e-newsletter with information on teaching and living abroad in a particular country, a teaching idea, job updates, etc. And we have a very active social media presence that we use to maintain community via Facebook, Twitter, and our blog. You're also able and welcome and encouraged to come and observe classes whenever you want. This can be before the course begins if you want to get a sense of what it's like. During a course, this is more applicable if you're taking the extensive part-time course. If you're on the intensive, you can be a little too busy. However, after the course is a great chance to come and see different levels, see different teachers, and experience different teaching styles. And this can be a really useful learning experience as well. We also offer free monthly professional development workshops here at our language school. Every month we offer a 1-hour professional development workshop 3 different times a day to work in with your schedule. Sometimes more than once a month. They're very practical, they're very hands-on, and they're completely free for all of the teachers at the language school and all of the alumni from our TESOL Center. Graduate credits are also available. SIT is a graduate university, so 5 credits are available. It's done directly through them. They can be transferred to other institutions, obviously at that institution's discretion. So if this is something that you're considering, of course you should make sure that they're transferable before you go ahead and make the commitment. And finally, Rennert also offers additional specialty courses in TESOL. If you're planning to go overseas, you may end up teaching young learners, or you may want to teach business English, and these add-on courses are a great way to get some specialty knowledge in those areas. We also offer a refresher course for English teachers. These are for qualified, experienced teachers, and people come from all around the world and get new ideas and fresh perspectives and share their teaching practices, etc. It's a really great form and really rewarding way of having some professional development. How can you apply for the TESOL course, or any of them, if you're interested? The first thing to do, of course, is send us an email, tesol@rennert.com, and we will send you an application form. You'll then return that application form and the essay that's included in the form to us, and then we'll have an interview. And then there's a deposit, there's a pre-course awareness task, and then 2 weeks before the course begins, you pay the tuition. The tuition fees are here for the certificate course and also for our specialty courses. So, that's basically the course. Here are what some people have said about the course. It can be a little challenging, but it's also incredibly rewarding, and it's really a great way to start what is incredibly rewarding, exciting, enriching career. And please reach out to us, send us an email if you have any additional questions. We're really happy to help. This is really a wonderful, it's just been such a great career choice for me, and I'm sure that it will be for you as well. Thank you very much.